Hi, Sonia. It's so good to see you and to have the chance to talk about your book. I'm Margo Irvin. I am the acquisitions editor for Jewish Studies here at Stanford University Press. And Sonia Gollance is here to talk a little bit about her wonderful book that has come out on our list this year, It Could Lead to Dancing. I'm so thrilled to have this book on the list. And Sonia, could you just start off by telling us a little bit about the premise of the book and what you hope that readers will take away?
Thank you. So when people talk about acculturation and Jewish modernity, they often think about spaces in which it takes place. And so in my book, I argue that dancing, specifically partner dances, couple dancing, was one of the most popular activities in the period between the Enlightenment and the Holocaust, and that this was something that was performed um, internationally, both in Europe and the United States, and that it was a way for young people from different classes, from different backgrounds, to interact with one another without the involvement of families or a matchmaker. So this was a way for both men and women to show that they were becoming European, that they were becoming American. And a lot of times when people think about mixed dancing, they think of it as something that was forbidden because technically, according to Jewish law, it was. But they also assume that it never happened, or that it was basically just the punchline for a dirty joke, which I talk about. But I argue that it was actually a way for writers, whether they were Orthodox or completely secular and anti-religious, to talk about the various very significant changes that happened in Jewish communities between the Enlightenment and the Holocaust, so between 1780 and 1940, but in a way that would titillate their readers. And so these dance scenes in literary texts become this important point for developing characters and for bringing works to a dramatic climax.
Thank you. Yeah, and I would say, I think the book is just so beautifully written, and the way that you engage, especially with these dance scenes and the spaces in which they're occurring, is really just a complete delight to read. So one more question for you, which is just for aspiring authors out there, what piece of advice might you have for navigating the publishing process, that you found helpful as you went through the process of publishing your own book?
So I have two pieces of advice. And the first was basically talk to editors, set up meetings either virtually or in person at conferences like AJS. The two of us met at an AJS several years ago where we just had a 10-15 minute conversation where I explained the book that I was working on, and then you told me about what sorts of things that I would need to do in order to pitch the book to Stanford. And so I found that really helpful in terms of building relationships that would ultimately be helpful in getting the book published. So that's the first piece of advice.
Yeah, and
The
I would
second
just add on to that, I definitely welcome conversations with authors at any stage in the process, even if you're still more at the idea stage and are still putting together the proposal. It can be useful to just have a quick informal chat, just so that we're on the same page about kind of what I would be looking for in a proposal. So I absolutely second that.
And those conversations were helpful for me throughout the process too. The following AJS, when I was working on submitting the manuscript and I already knew that Stanford was interested, I remember talking to you about how to incorporate the joke with the punchline, it could lead to dancing because, or it could lead to mixed dancing, because it was something that I knew people would expect to have in the title if they had heard the joke, but if they hadn't heard the joke, they would be confused if it was in the title. And you gave me this suggestion that maybe I should start the introduction with this joke, which is one of the things that readers have told me that they really enjoy about my book. So very helpful to talk to editors throughout the process. The other piece of advice that I would say is when you're at the book proposal stage, to ask people who have already written book proposals to share them with you. And then you can look at them and see what sorts of things do you find compelling, what sorts of things do they put in their first paragraph, and then in the second paragraph, and like what sorts of ways do they use to talk about their own credibility, about the things that their book does differently. How do they organize their books into chapters? I found that really helpful.
Great. Well, thank you so much for all of that, Sonia. And congratulations again on the book being out. I look forward to a future AJS where we will get to celebrate in person. And yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to chat.
Thank you. Delightful to chat with you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.